down to its essence. Anyway, here I'm going to start. What's up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching DL Live. It's a daily stream show in which we talk about game design. Usually the conversations start in our Discord, which you can find on our Twitter, which everything goes by design-oriented, so you just have to remember one thing. The conversations start there, and we usually kind of wrap things up or recap them on these daily streams. They're usually not too long. This one's probably going to be 15 minutes, hopefully. Let's hope I don't go overboard. But the topic of the day is tiers of design. It's just something I was thinking about earlier this morning. And just based on observations, people are usually in different phases of these design, which is, you can just call them phases or whatever. But on a very basic level, it starts with a brainstorming phase. When people consider, like, wouldn't it be cool if, or why don't we make this game meets this game meets this game? Yeah. And like, this is just free thought, free ideas, everything. Nothing's a bad idea. Like, everything could be potentially amazing, right? Second tier is when you have to actually pick some of these designs and attempt to create them. And while you do, you identify certain ideas that work better with each other, certain synergies, and you can possibly identify potential problems. But this third tier right here is really interesting. It's all just about solving problems. So, like, no more creative decisions, no more adding things to the equation. It's just like, based on what we have here and the problems that we have already identified, what can we do to fix this problem, right? So that's just a basic idea. I'm going to play some N++ in the back and kind of mull over this topic. Well, Adrian here on the chat, he might have any questions. He'll speak up when he wants to. But basically, I think it's really hard to like so many things. It's super important to recognize sort of what phase you're in, so that on a very basic communication level, you're like, I don't want to be like messing up if there's no hope of communicating, right? Like, I don't want to waste my time. So from what I can tell, different phases shouldn't really talk to each other, because the first one is so nebulous, the second one is so limited by the first one, and problems only matter and are able to be solved when enough of the moving parts have been decided. So like, phase 3 can't really deal with phase 2, right? I guess a lot of talk on the internet is mostly phase 1. People just like to think they're talking about design, but really they're just talking about whatever they like, whatever ideas come to mind, whatever combination of games they think would be the greatest game ever, things like that. And yeah, this impulse. I don't know, Adrian, where are you in your own projects? In that
I have
tier?
one. Right now I have one question, and that's distinguishing the difference between X meets X versus the synergies, because those two sound very similar.
So like, once you have a pool of ideas to draw from, that's when the synergies, you can't, like, that's when you start considering, like, maybe this idea would go better with this idea or whatever. But that's based on all the things you've already identified as cool, or even some pieces that you already have in your game. Like, just because you put it in a game doesn't mean that the pieces have to be like in the same play space. You can create levels that separate pieces. You can create combinations that only exist in very controlled environments, right? So the first one is mostly brainstorming. The second one is kind of arranging pieces that you've already brainstormed.
Okay. I guess another way is saying it's going from more general to more specific.
Yeah, phase 2 being the more specific, and phase 3 is just dealing with the specifics.
Yeah, the most specific.
Okay, let's see that. So it's kind of, I mostly live in 3, which is hard for me to talk to people about design sometimes. All I'm thinking about, like, I've considered so many different genres. I've broken them down so much. I've looked at so many games and their successes and their failures. And I'm like, okay, you know, the whole like, wouldn't this be cool if this existed? I'm so over that. Like, I have my own ideas. Usually my ideas, I get excited about thinking about them because I start with addressing a problem. So I'm like, oh, I think this idea would fix this, right? And like, that's what makes me super excited to like brainstorm it out. And then a lot of times it's kind of hard for people to even like entertain that conversation because it's like, that was dumb. If they're not even seeing the same bits or considering the same bits in their head as you are in yours, then that conversation really can't happen. I'm sitting here going like, oh, I think, you know, there's a long-running problem in 2D brawlers, right? So I'm gonna address that problem with this, and from there, like, I think that fixing that problem would shape the entire game creation. So like, everyone kind of knows that some games seem more tight and more cohesive than others. Some games seem to be carved out of a single piece, and we know based on like Nintendo interviews, they build their games and they kind of like find a core and find the fun, they prototype, and then they try to make everything sort of support that. They did that with Splatoon, they did it with ARMS, they do it often enough, right? Like, and that's how you get a lot of sort of pieces in your game and synergies that are like, oh, like this is obviously here to support this, this is obviously here to fit together with this, and everything just feels like it fits together, like nothing's just out of place, like a random first-person shooter mission in Banjo 2 or something. How do I even do this one? This one's hard. But you know, a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people, so like, the only reason I feel like you do that is when you're so tired of having a quote-unquote great idea and then trying to hash it out, and then the whole thing kind of falls apart, right? You're tired of doing all this work and having it sort of not pan out, right? So like, people who really sort of feel the problems in certain genres or certain designs and like really are tired of like bad 3D, for example, trying to platform in 3D and not being able to judge the distance between you and a platform directly in front of you, and it's really difficult. And instead of using a double jump and instead of sort of allowing the player to use a hard shot and overcompensate, like, what other things can we do to gain that? I have no idea how to get these coins. What am I supposed to do? Oh, interesting.
You can sort of Super Meat Boy jump off the same wall, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it looks like it wants you to do, but it's extremely tight.
Oh my gosh. Just touch it. Okay. Now I can try to get back to the stage. I don't know how to just give that just a little oomph. Oh my gosh, you have to keep your momentum. Can I even make it to the second? Okay. Ah! Okay, I need to keep all that momentum. Wow. Okay. It's the main score. Yay. Not even close. Not even in the hundreds. I said I wasn't going to get all the little gold coins and kind of perfect these levels, but I'm doing it anyway. That's because that's where the real fun of the levels is. Like, if I just skipped that last section, that wouldn't have been that fun. What do I need to do on this one? Quick. I just need to get the last one. Oh, the last one was too hard, but I'll just play this now. So, what were we talking about? Oh, that was so bad.
The tiers of design. People getting tired of the problems and your ideas that they keep trying to make.
Yeah, so trying to make a cohesive product, and you're like, okay, well, one way to do that is to address a lot of the problems. And that's why I kind of say that design is like, some people are like, oh, where do you start when you do an analysis? Where do you start when you're brainstorming design ideas? I'm like, where do I start? I'm like, I'm always constantly moving from tier 1 to 3 and 3 to 1, or at least they're mindful of each other. So like now, just based on experience, I know what ideas might instantly create problems. So I'm like, oh, I'm not just gonna like brainstorm MMO plus anything, right? That's problems. MMOs suck. And also that would be a huge undertaking regardless, right? So, how do I get back? Okay. Not too hard. But then, you know, maybe if I identify a problem, instead of like trying to solve it, I go back down to tier 1 and be like, well, are there any other things I want to try? And that sort of thing. So I'm constantly going back and forth. And it's not even... I think that's like the flexible part of trying to find the sweet spot. And the sweet spot oftentimes involves like your time that you can invest in the project, your talent, and people working with you. So it's not just like every idea isn't free, right? Like everything costs something.
You asked me earlier about my own project. One that I have been contemplating, because my game is so heavily inspired by the NES Ninja Gaidens, is actually the crouch slash, and whether or not to like keep that or take that out of the game, because it is something in the original games that very few enemies actually need to be killed with that, and it's also one of those more nuanced things. It's kind of like how Mega Man doesn't actually have a crouch, and yet it gets so much done with it. So I'm thinking, like, what is the value in having the crouch? And that's kind of a overview of the mechanics that I'm wondering, can I cut that out, or could I put in a new value in this that wasn't in the original game? I'm not sure what tier that would fall under. I guess that would be tier 3, which is solving problems. Like, how do I make this more interesting than what it was in the original games?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes asking yourself, like, do I need this? That's sort of like maybe tier 2, where you're like, synergies, right? You're looking for the ideas in your game that's going to produce sort of the effect you want, but then you're like, wait a minute, this thing is not even necessary, right? So identifying certain parts of your game that are necessary and certain parts that aren't, like, it's pretty, what am I supposed to do here? I remember them tweeting about their level design process and how they slowly have sort of made a ton of levels and collected them across the years. And since this game's like pretty much the same game it's been since like N+, maybe even N, like, oh, they have, what do they say, tens of thousands of levels? Because they've been working on this game for a long time. I don't know how many community games are in this community levels, but that was so close. So one of the problems with identifying problems is, like, you have to have some, I mean, you gotta really sort of look at games very closely, right? Oh, you can get up on the top level. What the? Is there any way I can get up there? Oh yeah, this is interesting. Cool. So I have to do this,
see it. Yeah.
and then you have to do this. Wow, what's my shortest hop? Wow, are you serious? Okay. If I skip the button, I still can't get out. What how do I guess? I'm just gonna beat it, whatever. Yeah, so like identifying problems, a lot of people don't think a lot of things are problems. And that's a problem. Oh wait, it looked like it put up a blocker. Where did that blocker come from?
Wait, yeah. Because that was the thing that was confusing me the entire level. Like, there's no way to get past that diagonal laser without something getting in its way.
Well, I missed my opportunity to solve that one, but I can always come back later. Yeah, so that's one of the things about this level design. Hey, Dual Ryan! Hey! He got a lower score than me. What a jerk. By like 5 points. What is this, Mario Run again, where we're going to be competing against all these scores? Wow, Dual Ryan keeps outdoing me. I need more friends. Yeah, and kind of like people, you don't really have a problem with things if you think it's the best you can be, right? Like, oh, and then you don't have a problem with, and you don't have a problem with things if you don't try to be any better than what you are, right? So like, if the game has bad controls, but you're just like, that's just what it is, then you know you're not gonna worry about fixing them because you just think that's just what it is. And that usually happens because you have a limited amount of experience. Because like, you could do the same food analogy. You might think that cheesecake is great or whatever until you've had a better one. Or like, until you've gone to Italy and tasted the croissants from it. Like, yeah, I haven't been. So I think this one's good. Okay. Well, it's all relative. And a lot of people don't even understand what skill-based game design is, so they're just like, eventually I'll just get it. You're like, yeah, because you're either engaging in RPG elements or you're just bashing your head against it over and over. Like, that's not good. So then if you try to communicate like, oh, these principles are super important for making skill-based, you're like, nah, and you're like, what do you mean nah? There's no nah. Your game needs it so that it's skill-based, so that every time, oh shoot. Every time something happens, oops, I can get it on the way back. The player is in control. So then you're like, oh, that was close. Then you're like, well, why won't people recognize things being skill-based? Like, one, they're not pushing themselves, and two, they play the genres that keep catering to other things. You're like, oh. So then, I mean, that's not a problem in and of itself for an individual game. But then, as a designer, when you want to get more experience, that's a problem. You just got to recognize that those things probably all go in the same bucket. And then we bucket. Like this kind of stuff in inputs, I think is dumb. Like avoiding the goal so carefully, so that you don't trigger it, right? You know, like, that's kind of dumb. Just let me have my freedom. These are one-way entrances unless I do this clever little trick.
This game is actually pretty cool. It's got me really interested.
You've never played it?
No.
Oh wow, it's like the floatiest. I think it's a platformer with the slowest vertical climb ever. Look at this. If you want to go vertical.
Yeah, but everything involving momentum like that, like the way your momentum was dying because of the way you were wall jumping in that one level, it's like that's really
You'll
interesting
really love
to
this
me.
stuff then. This next part.
Yeah. Like, just finding new ways to play with platformer physics is something that I'm really intrigued with. Wow, look at
Yeah,
that!
you'll see it. No one else can make it this far. Ah! Okay.
You're kind of like Sonic building up momentum going up those ramps.
It's better to keep the missile alive, I think. Oh, come on. I just said what I said. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Not Popeye. The missile has a really strong course correction. See, like, he just went around that edge, like, you cheap missile, you. This is cool. This is a good level. This is one of my favorites so far. See, I was playing like the tutorial levels, so they weren't like the most stellar thing. But now I'm getting into some of the good stuff, and I bet it's gonna get better and better. There's tens of thousands of levels in this game. I'm never gonna worry about running out. I beat every level in the 3DS, the DS version, and that version was trash.
Oh.
It wasn't like programmed correctly or couldn't handle it because it's a DS, and like certain interactions were just inconsistent. One of the cool things I remember, one of the programmers for this, named Sean, I think he was testing the deterministicness of the system he coded, and they were running some replays of really tricky stuff, and if anything was inconsistent, the replay would be inconsistent because they were doing one of those like no touch controllers, Rube Goldberg kind of things. Oh my gosh, I probably should have done the last one. Oh.
That scarf that they have is a really nice touch. It's actually very useful.
Just like the smoke
visual
trails in Smash
feedback.
Bros.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing about a lot of indie platformers is they make their characters really tiny on the screen. I don't know why, but they just do. So it's kind of hard to see this little dude. If you got HD, it helps. But imagine being on a DS screen.
Oh god.
I think the DS screen couldn't even handle a lot of the levels, too. But what they did was, oh no! This is a neat level. Kind of like awkward coins.
Yeah. That's another interesting property I was seeing right there. His momentum is actually he's slowly accelerating as he's moving through the air when you're doing those wall jumps.
Yeah, he slowly gains momentum when you repeatedly same wall jump. And then he slowly, he preserves momentum, I think, if you run flat to a wall and just wall jump off of it. At least, yeah, you got some good momentum there. No! And then you can instantly wall jump on any wall no matter what, and if you slide on any wall before colliding, you're taking fall damage, you'll break the dangerous part of the fall damage. Yep, this passed the tuning test of hold forward right away and you better not hit me. I don't know why this one's hard, but maybe if you're trying to save as much time as possible.
So tiers of design.
Yeah, identifying problems requires sort of a certain level of skill, a certain level of experience, a certain level of like having taste, right? Not just settling for what we have, understanding fundamental things about interactions like maybe that person couldn't have done anything about that. Maybe that is too fast for people to react to. Maybe you need more feedback, like, and you got to start really looking at the equation instead of just the end result. Like, did they beat it or not? Like, who cares? Like, how did they beat it? How are we making it hard or easy for them? How are we making it more intuitive? How can we allow them to express more of their skill? What is this?
So I guess an example for Tier 3 design would be how Nintendo made ARMS. Because, well, if I remember correctly, that specifically came out of the question of why don't you see fighters from over-the-shoulder perspective, and then they just wanted to see if that was even possible.
Yeah, they specifically said, we started with trying to solve this problem to see if it was... Let's go, baby, go! Shoot. Go, baby, go, baby, go! Yeah, that was sweet. And now we are on the clone ninjas. Yeah, so like they definitely started with the problem first. It's so cool though. And like when I'm thinking of any game now, I'm like problem first, right? Because I'm gonna die. Nope. Problem first, because we've made enough remixes of all the same flavor. It's about time we start making some really solid products. And like reviewers don't know. Oh, this is not bad. Yeah, wall kicking left and right on the tiny corridor allows you to shoot up. And you can shoot up so fast that you smack yourself in the ceiling and die. Hey, 448, it's one of my lowest ranks. Global rank, that means all the people who played this, I'm like, that's my global smash power, or the opposite, that's my rank. Yeah, so I guess you can just like pick some random genres of problem or projects, and then I'll just see. I'll tell you like what problem that I would try to address first, and like and how that shapes everything.
Let's see. Oh, strategy. Turn-based strategy.
Turn-based strategy. If it's multiplayer, one problem. By the way, I put all these design problems issues in my what's it called? Are these bombs? No, it's gonna kill me. I put it in my spreadsheet with all my games that I've ever played, and there's a tab called Design Issues. So, as the name suggests, there are issues that I have with games that I would address. So, turn-based strategy games, I think, are I just don't think people like strategy games, but people, to get closer to playing more strategically, it'd be cool if people, you know, didn't take forever on the turns, right? And they didn't, they remembered more of like what they thought and what their process was of thinking, and focused more on that instead of beating the mission in front of them. Oh no! I didn't want to do that. Speaking of beating the mission in front of me, I'd do it. So one thing I would do for turn-based strategy is like, okay, let's make it to where the turns are faster, and not just faster like, you know, get on with it, here's a timer, but faster in the sense that like, no, how do I describe this? Oh, okay, this is pretty cool. Okay, that did not do what I wanted. Not good. Okay. So like, less people fiddling around with numbers, less time like trying to count ranges and stuff like that. Like less of that, right? And then, you know, I would do something more like Enlighten, where I would ask them, or I'd make the player more aware of what their strategy is. So instead of making these super long experiences that oftentimes don't have a lot of strategy, because single player games are designed for you to sort of like beat the setup anyway, so you can learn what how the game works. I would focus the player on sort of tuning these sort of groups of heuristics or whatever. So like, you start off with like always charge forward, full steam ahead. You're like, okay, that's your strategy, and then it would play out like super rapidly. I think that'd be pretty interesting. How do I get this last gold? I know how. This is pretty cool. No. So like, yeah, I would focus more on the repetition. Like, I want people to run through things and be able to think so freely about their strategy that they're not bogged down with turn-to-turn moves and all that junk. I've looked at a lot of games like what's it called, like Yagatarasu? No, that's a fighting game. It's like Yggdrasil. Have you ever heard of that game? It's like something of Yggdrasil. It's the same people that made Knights of the Nightmare. Like, this is the game they made prior, and it's on GBA. Might as well look it up. But they have this game where like you move your pieces, and then for some reason your pieces, like advanced swords, represent multiple pieces, and when you go into the battle phase, they crash into each other. But there's something you could do on the overworld about standing in a proper formation so that you can get benefits. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. And it looked like it played a little faster, so I'm like, okay, that's cool. So like the Fire Emblem game I told you about, address some of these issues by making each move that, like, not a lot of units that you move for one, and then they made it address the issues by saying like, okay, don't worry so much about the individual moves that you make on the small scale, because you're gonna have to turn around and like think about this on a macro scale. So like, encourages you to make whatever moves on the small scale, and since you don't have the full context, you're not too worried about doing calculations and worrying about the consequences and stuff like that. And I think that'd be pretty much in the same line of addressing that issue I told you about, making turns faster and making it to where players think about their moves and the history of their moves. So that'd be along the same lines. But as far as leveling up and RPG elements, no, that's not strategy. And yeah, I liked what Codename Steam did with sort of infusing real-time elements and turn-based elements, but it was kind of awkward. But what a neat potential idea.
Yeah, it bears a lot of similarity to Valkyria Chronicles, and the Overwatch is more like XCOM, though. Yeah,
that's the Overwatch system. It's probably named after the same thing.
Oh yeah, but anyways, I brought up strategy games because it still made me curious that how you said, as much as you love Advance Wars, you don't think it makes for good.
Almost got hit by a laser.
Yeah, a competitive strategy game.
Yeah, I think they have to have some real-time element in order for it to be sort of more manageable in a lot of different ways. Oh no! But I haven't studied like the changes of the real-time strategy genre, but it looks like not a lot has happened since StarCraft 2, and a lot of people have tried, but they're pretty much copying StarCraft 2 too much. Let's make asymmetrical races and a race to get these certain bases and all this stuff. I'm like, not my style.
Yeah, because it actually falls in line with what you were saying earlier. If devs don't even see that as a problem, it's like, well, what you gonna do? Strategy game's gonna take at least 45 minutes. Even on a small map like the one we were playing on.
Yeah. It's funny how a lot of board games are marketed as strategy games because they want you to be like, think about your moves, outsmart your enemies, blah, blah, blah. But the strange thing is, they don't have strategy. They're not actually designed robust enough. I haven't played any what they call heavy Euros and stuff like that. But I'd wager... Oh no, I popped the thing I didn't want to pop. I'd wager they don't have... Well, I'm not going to wager. I don't care about talking about a game series I don't know about or a game genre. But like a lot of these board games I'm playing, I can just see right through their sort of design space. I'm like, that's not gonna be strategic enough. You don't have enough information here. This is just kind of designed to distract, blah blah blah, like a lot of games are.
Yeah, that happened to me with a game called Settlers of Catan, where it's just like just too much luck in it. What board games were you playing?
Just about every single game on the planet. I'm not a big fan of card games. Like I played a little bit of Magic and I played Pokemon, and I loved it when I was. Oh my gosh, these things keep getting me when I was first learning about strategy. But now I'm just like, again, I would like to know more about how Magic the Gathering works, but until then, I'm just basing it off of what I know. And like, the deck building and the turn-based aspect seems very, very strange to me, and it kind of I don't know, sometimes it feels like there's a lot of complexity for not a lot of strategy, and there's not a lot you can do, and certain decks and combinations come up, and I'm like, well, there's all these issues of like how many cards you have, how many cards are in circulation, what do you have to build your deck with, and you know what comprises a power deck. So there's a lot of what I see that I'm just like, I'm not impressed. That's why I'm studying chess more, and I want to get into Go, because they really apparently have done something particularly unique to make their games long-lasting and widely popular. So I'm like, well, what did they do? I'm not interested in making another Go or any chess or anything like that, because I like smaller, shorter experiences when it comes to strategy and stuff like that.
That's interesting. Those pink things bounce off each other.
You're gonna kill me again! I knew it! I knew it! I knew it!
Have you
I knew it.
tried Puzzle Strike, or what was that game called? Codex?
Card Time Strategy.
Yeah, by David Sirlin.
I've played a little Puzzle Strike, I think. Which one's that one? One with the chips?
Yeah, the chips.
I was playing that online. The free online version.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
And I kind of want to buy Fantasy Duel or whatever you call it, or some more of his board games and kind of play with the board game people. Because, you know, Serlin comes from a more video game background, and he seems to know what he's talking about. That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, I'm not sure what's. Strategy is so weird. It's so neat that with fighting games, you have this one aspect where you're racing to knowledge, but this other aspect of the double blind kind of keeps it in check. I don't know how to get these other ones. I'm gonna die. I don't know what I'm doing. I should not have touched that button.
The other board game that I see mentioned a lot is one called Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Named after my home island.
Yeah, Puerto Rico. I can't get these. I've been trying so long.
That's so cool. They bounce off each other. I don't know many enemies that home in on you like that, because I'm so used to them just like moving through each other when they chase you like that, but these they actually get in each other's way. It's so cool. Oh, fall damage killed you.
So yeah, like essentially all the games that I would want to make that are interesting because they appeal to that same strategy ness, but trying to make them have a non-dominant strategy and like be competitive are things I'm not interested in. So I'm always thinking about strategy, and I'm always thinking about what makes things interesting choices and these engaging ways that these challenges engage our skill and different ways to manifest different things that happen in your brain. So that's always happening. So that's why I just have no need to make a strategy game that tries to focus so hard on it that it makes the problem harder for itself.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think that went quite a bit just on the strategy one. I guess another for problems that you would approach. How about the platformers?
Platformers. So the issue I have with platformers is people haven't really brainstormed enough of their own styles yet. That's why I really liked Flat Pack that we played, and I really like thinking about Captain Toad, and I really like thinking about Maboshi's Arcade, and just in general, like I have a ton of ideas that I would like to do that either break up the space differently or do other things and play with other ways. Like people copy Metroidvania too much. They need to get their own freaking ideas. Like get your own idea about how a space and a world would work so that you can have your own ideas. But yeah, I have a lot of my own, and the problems are just basic things like camera. You're like, well, that's already been solved. We have great cameras. Yeah, we have great cameras for a lot of the style games that we have already, but we don't have great cameras for these new ideas and games that are more and more 3D and games that want you to dramatically see things that are happening instead of just flatly see things from a distance with a pulled back camera. Even though I love single screen camera games like this, I love single screen. I'm gonna blow up. I don't know how to best preserve this momentum. Do I run along the bottom? That's not too bad, but I gotta jump right when I hit the bottom. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so then, you know, that'd be a matter of me defining a lot of these new ideas, which I can't do right now, but, and then... and then going about it from there. But yeah, camera's a big deal. You know, doing new ways to do multiplayer and not having the game break and having new ideas. That's kind of a... Like, platformers are such a basic genre too, like a dude moving through space, that you really don't have... The problems always come in with all the new ideas you want to put in, like all the extra specific things. And I want to play around with 3D worlds that are cut in 2D slices and what that means for, you know, orienting and what it means for moving through the 3D space and seeing things ahead of time and navigating even though you're still in 2D. Like, that's what I want to experiment with.
Okay, how about I think another one. Oh, racing games, since Daniel's been thinking about those a lot lately.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. Racing games. Do I have my own racer? No. Ah, that was cool. Racing games are a lot like platformers. Just a thing moving through space, right?
That's right.
And so like racing game, I'm not into like realistic car races, so I like my Mario Karts, my Hydro Thunders, and my Excite Treks. Like, that's what I like. Ah! Yeah, keeping your momentum like this is pretty cool, you're right. Like,
hell, get these guys to make a Sonic game.
I mean, oops! I thought that was the goal. I wasn't even paying attention.
What happened?
Oh
wow.
my gosh, how'd that work? Oh my gosh, I was not paying attention. I mean, and then you say that, but you know, I have my own like version of a lot of what I would do with a lot of IPs, including Sonic and like Pokemon RPG and things like that, and like my own ideas I would do in a Zelda style. So like that kind of answers that question, but otherwise I try to make it my own things. Like racing, I don't really care about racing, honestly. I feel like a lot of what you do in action games anyway involves some kind of race or fight over space, like getting to places first, and I like that aspect. I like building it out of more sort of the action of the moment instead of explicitly like we are here to race. But I don't think racing games really have that much of a problem besides your classic, like, you know, when a guy gets ahead, how do you make the game interesting for the people in back, like stuff like that. No, it won't do the same thing. Why'd you put a bomb there? So I run down the hill just like I did.
I guess puzzle's a bit too broad. I don't know if you have any problems with puzzle games as a genre. Okay. I think. Okay, I know. Stealth games.
I think stealth games are kind of like what I was saying with racing. Like, you can build stealth out of action. And careful positioning and timing is what you do in any good action game. So why do you need to make it to where you take a simple encounter with an enemy and you drag it out because, you know, oh, you can see me. Oh, I gotta wait for his vision code. Like, what a waste. What a boring waste. I don't know how to get all these. Oh, you find which one to ramp off of? Interesting. I'm about to get zapped. The Z was zapped. That's the name of a book, I think. What an interesting level. Don't you zap me. What an interesting level. You're gonna try to zap me.
Anything for first-person shooters?
Oh, I keep missing that one. I don't think they're interesting. I would return to form and try to... Come on! No! Put some missions back into shooter. Oh no! Why? Why didn't that last one get gotten? Come on. Yeah, first-person shooters, the more they try to do, the more they kind of strain, I think. Like, you can't, if they don't render your body correctly and don't really calculate like it's a third-person game or a platforming game, these shooters kind of get really awkward trying to make you do more and more platforming, and I don't think first-person platforming is good. It suffers from the bad 3D problem as a primary thing, and then like not knowing where your body is, and you can't really do a lot of precision platforming. Oh! So, and then they focus a lot on like AI and a lot of things like that that I don't think are important to focus on. Because I think, like Grisco, like I like my AI simple, and I like my challenges layered. I don't like this like pretending like I'm shooting real humans, even though I'm not, kind of stuff. Shoot. It's one place I didn't want to land. Ooh. Here we go, big jump. Not big enough. No. Yeah, I feel like a lot of traditional, like a lot of popular games, a lot of games have moved away from just actually like crafting and creating level design. So you're like, is this supposed to be like interesting gameplay? Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I'd focus on. A lot of the ways I build challenges are different than what you see in a lot of the genre just in general. So you're like, it'd at least be different.
Right. The way you ragdolls is so funny.
I don't know exactly when he takes fall damage or what speed it is, because it's not really fall damage, it's all about the speed. So like, sure.
Okay, here's another one. How about shmups?
Yeah, so like, here's the deal. A lot of the games in their original incarnations and a lot of these don't you know? A lot of these games when they started off as old school genres like that have been refined really well. There's usually some pretty standout, like super clean examples of it. People who really just sort of crystallize it instead of trying to add more complexity. That's why I consider the Karga as being the best shmup. I really like it, so like too bad for everyone else. But I'm always curious, like, what do people want to do with their game besides just copy other people, right? Like with my shmup, I want to build more. I'm all about them layers, right? I want to build more layers. And I would experiment with things like, how can we carve out the space and keep this really tight design and controls of like vertical shooters and shmups, and like even like have dynamic ways that the bullets can like escalate and stuff without having to, you know, just have these static waves of enemies and bullets coming in, and a lot of the traditional ways that the points are calculated and stuff like that. I really like the idea of having dynamic spaces and then carving the gameplay out of it. So like, okay, this is a large space, it's 3D. You're a 2D slice, go ahead and slice it up. And then you're like, oh, you can carve the challenges out of that space and have these new ways for the to get in and out of missions, a new way to sort of layer the old challenges with new challenges. I'm really curious about that. Ultimately, when you're working with a shmup or any like genre like this, you're just trying to give the player some challenging things and vary it over time. Like, yeah, that's the basic goal that we're trying to hit. And like what I'm trying to do is like, how do we define these spaces and how do we inform the player and how do we go from there and build it in a way that sort of like takes into a lot of these modern sensibilities that we have because we have better technology. Like, because I feel like one of the things a lot of people do is they try to model things too directly, and what the old school genres did with their limitations is try to find sort of a functional equivalent, which is really helpful. And like, so like with now that we can model things better with that 3D technology, we have to rethink why we're doing the stuff we're doing in the first place. It's not just a matter of like, okay, shmup in 3D, cool, model bullets in 3D, just put them in there, and then like have a ship move around, and you're like, that's not exactly it. That's pretty much like, oh, 274, that's the lowest I've ever gotten because I worked hard on that stupid level. That's a cool level. You have to consider what they were going for, like what kind of experience they were going for, what kind of concepts were they trying to model, and if you just try to take it and then shove it in 3D, you are falling for the abstraction. Like these old school 2D games, you know, because the world isn't really in 2D. Like, they had to find something and then make it work within the confines of 2D. That's why, you know, bricks in Mario don't look odd in 2D because they're floating there. Well, that's because 2D isn't real, and them floating there is it's tapping into an artifice and a style of presentation that you suspend your disbelief willingly because you're like, oh, cool, like I understand the scene. There's bushes in the background, sky, cloud, pipes, like I get it. You know, like that's you get it. It's conveying a concept. So you don't want to translate that directly into 3D like you've seen some of those like first-person shooter or Unreal attempts to make World 1-1, and it's just like a skinny platform floating out in the middle of nowhere. You're like, this is not the equivalent. You are not doing it right. So with anything like that, with any art form, with any example you might draw from, there's a right and a wrong way. There's a right and a wrong way. That's all. And I'm really like Sakurai disassembling a lot of things and be like, well, what do I really like about X, right? And I think a lot of people can't really explain to a very nuanced degree, like, oh, that's why I did that Smash Brothers cast. I'm like, well, I need to be able to explain what I love about Smash, the core that I've identified, and things like that. Like, I need to be able to say, like, hey, this is not something that I feel. This is something that I can see, touch, play, share, teach. Like, that's important. And when I found it, I'm like, this is it. And when I say that out loud, it's so clear to me now that I can put it into other games without directly copying Smash. I don't have to like do the same exact thing in the same exact ways, hoping that I get the feeling that I want. I know the feeling that I want, and I know which elements create it. Okay. And I know how to design it directly forward. I know what problems that can come up shooting for. Like, it's just a really clear understanding now, when before it was just like feelings, anecdotes, memories, hopes, dreams, whatever those things humans are made out of. And breathe on. Breathe on. Yep. Survive on. I don't have enough momentum. So, do you remember me kind of being upset about what's that game called? Celeste?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, some of my favorite levels of Celeste. Dang it! Have these moving enemies that chase you. And the reason why it's so dynamic is because the tiniest little differences that you make in your movement are affecting its pathfinding, and that could affect these huge differences of whether it's in an entire area or not. The same thing's happening here. And that's why I like this level. And I don't have to guess, I can just describe it. And if I wanted to put something like this in the game, I'd have all these different options, right? Mario does it with booze and other such things, and okay, you want to be a jerk? Yeah, so I guess just taking a look in the future, we can take a look at the design issues and be like, oh, these are the things that need to be solved before getting all hyped up about your own idea and thinking it's going to be the greatest game ever. Solve this, and it very well may be. Okay.
How about MOBAs?
MOBAs? I don't think they should exist. How about that? I think RPGs are so problematic and troublesome, and they're an evolution of so many bad RPG design. Why same place? Why? What's wrong with me? I can get some of these on my way back, so I'm just gonna go for it. Get some more practice in the tough area. That's a cool trick. That was a cool fake out. Yeah. Oh no! worry. That's exactly what Master Roshi said. See how all the different... it was when Goku was transforming to a monkey in the tournament, and he's just like, not to worry, because he had a plan for it. I think that's the moment, because they played it on the Cartoon Network commercial all the time, and that's where I know the quote from. One thing that this game probably should do a lot better job of is zooming in or doing some kind of thing where you can know where your character is when you start. I don't know where he is. They're gonna make me get all these. Really? Yeah, this is a little excessive. So let me see if I can even beat it once I'm ready to beat it. Boing. Ah! For a split second, I thought the red were good, and I was like, ooh, coins. That's me. That's me. And then you have to go... Okay, so now, can I even get all these coins in the middle? Yeah, mobiles shouldn't... There's such like bad... Even though I don't like just saying bad all the time, I don't want to say it because I feel like it. Like RPGs and what they were originally designed for and what they're good for seems to be completely overlooked by people, and they're like, you just kind of, oh wow, you can't even wall jumping between them. Created a long history of like, oh, MMO combat. And people are like, yeah, MMO combat's so bad. Well, that's the core of what these MOBAs are made out of. They're like little MMOs you run. Wow, how are you supposed to get all of those? And then when somebody does something slightly different, like add one decent action element to the game, which is what I pretty much think Terraria did with its combat, people are like, yeah, Terraria combat. I'm like, you mean, yeah, like action games, and let's get to the part you like, because that tiny little bit from action games that they added to this is what you're flipping out about. So why don't we just go all the way and get a concentrated bite of this delicious cheesecake instead of some cheesecake flakes that they sprinkled on top of your whatever you're eating. Like, you want the actual cheesecake. That's what you're tasting. The goodness. What am I doing in this level? How am I supposed to get all these? That's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, how are you supposed to get... I'm done. Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge for another day. Okay, so like, okay, well, I hate MOBAs, right? But that's because the current style is made by the people who pioneered that particular style anyway. Wow. So like, okay, how about you remove all the stuff you don't like if you can just surgically do that? I'm like, okay. So the idea of having a multiplayer arena battle thing, with multiple people in it, in specific positions and, you know, playing certain roles, okay, we'll keep that. That's cool. It's cool enough. I'm about to die. If you look at one of my favorite multiplayer games of all times, Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks Battles, it's a top-down game, and there's not a lot of top-down games, right, that are 292. If I got even more of the gold, I would have been even higher in the list. That's because nobody wants to do that. Anyway. So there's nothing wrong with top-down play, but it's hard to make action games with top-down. There's just really not a lot of them. And Spirit Tracks Battle did a really good job. So I'm like, okay, why don't we just think of a MOBA in terms of Spirit Tracks Battle? And instead of all the grinding and all the money, gold that you purchase and all the tech trees and all those tropes borrowed from RPGs, why don't you just borrow things from the things you already like that don't rely on all those sort of bloated complexity thingies? Like, oh, that sounds good. Okay. So, I mean, like, instead of buying gear, like, why don't you just replace those with something akin to traditional Zelda items, right? Like Pegasus boots and Rock's feathers and things like mole mitts. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then, you know, playing a role, you can get upgrades and fight. And one of the best things about Spirit Tracks Battle, above, you know, the Four Swords Battle, is that you are fighting mostly indirectly. You're picking up bombs, and you can throw it at your opponents to pop gems out of them, but for the most part, they can't die. And it just makes it really hilarious. You want them to get hit by other things in the environment so you can take their gold. As long as they don't bother you, you don't care if they're alive or dead. So you're like, oh, that's a very indirect way of battling. Well, MOBAs also have their own degree of indirectness, right? You're farming on mobs, NPCs, things that aren't real life enemies, because when you battle a real life opponent, that's when it gets real tricky. And you got those like matchups and standoffs and things like that. So like, oh, okay, so you got your equivalent there. Like, that's cool. Yeah, and I could see just one of the things that MOBAs do is when you get a little advantage, it's these towers, and the towers are the choke points for the action. How am I supposed to get those stupid gold? Oh, there's a big gap. And there it was. And here's a little gap. See, this is a complex timer. Look at it.
Yeah. There's 7 lightning.
I'm out of here. I'm not gonna go for it. But now that there's a certain cycle where instead of repeated zaps down the corridor,
there.
It's a big gap. And since these levels are the same every time, I could just probably time it and go for it, which is probably what I'll do in the future. I still don't know how to exactly get up in that tube, and I just didn't want to deal with it. Cool, a nice simple level. Look at this. Oh, every time you grab a thingy, it leaves a bomb, huh? Pretty cool. Pretty monkey sound effects. I'm in trouble. You're only in trouble when you get caught. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. That's a quote from Cats Don't Dance.
Cats, oh my god. What, Peebo Pudge. Jeez. God. You hit me right in the childhood right there. I still have the VHS to that. God, what a good movie.
Nothing's gonna stop us now. So yeah, you can take any basic goal for a game and genre, and like if you know what you're doing, focus on the elements you like and keep and prune it, and like that's the whole idea, the whole point of like addressing problems. When I think of MOBA, I'm like, okay, a lot of the bloated complexity and the feedback, like garbage. Like, come on, all those sparks that nobody can tell what's happening. So here's the thing. Quickly identify a problem. I said before, I do not ever want to play, it's exaggeration, but an action game that doesn't have knockback. Because I think a really important part about having characters move around in space and try to hit each other is that they take knockback and or stun, like some combination of that. So it's like, oh, you got the hit, push me back, I see. Now I'm going to try to get some hits on you and push you back. But without, oh no. That's probably what I didn't want to happen. Oh no. Okay. Oh! That was really well tuned. I was like, it feels like they want me to do this, and I was like barely running, and I had to get that running start. Yeah, so like, I want my knockback, right? It's super important for both adding clarity to who got hit and where. Like, you can see them slide back, and you see the person who didn't get slide back. That's why I think the Hollow Knight self knockback thing is so weird and counterintuitive. Like, who made that up? It's cool to kind of be like, look, the bug is light and things he hits are heavier, so he gets knocked back. But that's not how swords work. I don't care how light you are. If you swing hard enough, you cut through your target. You don't bounce off. Like, that's not how swords work. It's a nail.
Yeah.
It's a sword. So, like, the fact that you're constantly pushing yourself back instead of pushing your enemies back and, like, cornering, making your enemies go into a corner and you fall off platforms, is really irritating about Hollow Knight's basic combat. Then they have a gem, a charm that's like, take that away. I'm like, well, yeah, take that away, because I'd like to play some decent sword combat. But anyway, a knockback is super important. I would design the MOBA around, oh, what a tricky little ending. Around knockback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you think like, well, what other game? Dang. What other game kind of had a really good sense of space and had MOBA-like qualities, but was an action game and then kind of messed it up? You're like, oh, Gigantic. Like, Gigantic had some cool animations and a cool concept. MOBA-like concept where you can even get to towers and summon mobs or summon whatever it is. And you're like, oh, that's cool, but it's in an action context, so a lot of the characters are running around trying to kill each other. But then that game doesn't have any stun or knockback, so when characters get close, it's just like a flurry of attacks. Hit points are popping up and down. Characters are freely moving as they're freely attacking, and it just does not bring clarity. It doesn't like reflect any real world combat or real world sport or real world anything. So like that's odd. So like RPGs when they originally were conceived, they're like, oh, we're not really modeling things in space, so we don't need I'm about to get shot at. Oh, so they didn't need knockback. You're like, okay, that makes sense. Final Fantasy VI, you don't need knockback. There's little dudes fighting these large Amano-style artwork creatures. So when RPGs kept evolving and they just kept like not putting in knockback, they didn't even consider like that was important. So then they make these action games with no knockback. You're like, what are you doing? Now I know games like Mega Man and Mario don't have knockback. Mega Man does. Mario just like takes, but he only takes 2 hits. You want to make your game take 2 hits, fine. Then you don't need knockback if you just take 2 hits. That's the compromise. But otherwise, knockback is super important. And even if you're not even considering like combos and stuff, who cares about combos? That's just basic. I do a thing. Did I successfully hit? And what's the result? That kind of like gameplay, that kind of feedback, super unclear with anything that's RPG inspired and MOBA based. So that's a problem I'd address right away. And instantly that would get my this game's pretty cool as long as it keeps doing really well-tuned things like that instead of frustrating me. I don't think these levels, deliberate choices of plenty, is that what the level's called? Cool, I need these level names in my, did I not get all the gold on that one? Are you kidding me?
No, you missed one.
Adrian, that was your only job.
I am like 30 seconds behind. Splatoon's example of a game that doesn't feature either knockback or hit stun.
Yeah.
Although you could say
short time to kill is important there. Just like the Mario thing I said, like as long as you kill him relatively quickly, which oh no!
So I guess separate from the MOBA, but probably somewhat related, would be something like Overwatch or even Kid Icarus Uprising, where you have a longer time to kill shooter.
So that's why Kid Icarus has
hit stun and knockback, yeah.
Knockdowns too. Knockdowns. You're like super knockback. You're down on the ground, you get up. And that adds a pacing element. It adds an element of sort of a wake-up game and some rock, paper, scissors there. It's like, oh, that's cool. You're like, yeah, it's cool. Let's just do it! No!
Man, look at all those cosmic clones. That was some of the coolest stuff in Mario Galaxy 2.
I'm gonna try to just scrape the bottoms of these, not jumping any higher than I have to. And then when I come back, I'll be able to. I'm gonna wait here, and then I'm gonna go for it.
Also, just a fun fact about actual real life sword combat is that you're not supposed the whole point is to cut them. You're not trying to hack at them like you're using an axe, because what happens if you swing a sword that way is it gets stuck in them because you're hitting it to someone's bones, which they train you to not do. That's why you just cut them and have them bleed out to death. Especially on the hands, because you have a major artery there on your wrist.
Maybe you do, because you're human. Yeah, so...
You saying you're not human?
That's not what I said. I was insinuating that you're not human. No.
Oh.
Maybe you do. Okay, that's another bad joke. Yeah, so... yeah, in the RPG, those elements and that gameplay is so dirty. What surprises me, like, how do casual players glom onto that? Like, it's so messy and so confusing, and people have such a hard time getting into it. Yet for whatever reason, people are like, yeah, get your friends into it. It's free to play. Like, how about you just sit down and twiddle your fingers? Because that's that's a lot cleaner of experience. Oh man, not quite though. Yeah, sometimes I don't understand. Like, you guys are complaining about, like, fighting games, and like, I can't do a combo. You sat there and learned a MOBA. Multiple characters, multiple tech trees, multiple items. Like, if you learn, like, the best build, that's more than I learned.
I think it's because in some weird way it's still actually easier to
learn a bunch of linear things and then a non-linear thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because strategy is still harder than memorizing a tech tree.
I mean, so like, I guess the roles that you play in these games simplify it, and that's why the team play is so important. But all these games have strategy. Why can't I get up over the wall? I'm not focused enough to do this one. How far in am I? Oh no. Oh my gosh.
I just saw you like hop in from entering the level and instantly die from fall.
Yeah, that's me. And a lot of people don't understand, like, a lot of the attributes they attribute to things. Oh my gosh, that's it. That's the strat. It can come and go, right? Like, I mean, you can reach some of those same experiential conclusions, like depth and strategy and cunning and exciting moments. You can reach those a bunch of different ways. That's why usually when you focus on cleaning up your game, it's never at the sacrifice of that stuff. Oh shoot, went too high. Oh shoot. That's all I hate. Come on! I can't even get over a wall! It's so bad. Oh, come on! I'm tired.
Yeah. Oh, this stream. Oh my god, how long has this stream been going for? I think an hour and 15 minutes.
Even though I should never say I'm gonna do a short one, because I never do. I never do, but we should end it right after I beat this level. 3 hours later. Yeah, I should go to bed. But I want to win. So these levels are like 5-level chunks, and if you cancel, you gotta do them all from the beginning, which isn't, that hard. Come on! This game doesn't really have like a buffer where you're like, I hit the button slightly before I hit the ground, give me my jump. They're like, you didn't hit it when you were on the ground. And maybe a lot of platformers are like that, but it just kind of depends on how much airtime you have. Yeah.
It might be a little more necessary for a game like this, considering how small your character is.
Why didn't you? Yeah. It's a fidelity thing. You're like, do I really want to squint just to make sure I am touching a thing? I have to get smacked, aren't I? Yes, so stupid. So I think the strat, I don't know what the strat is actually. I think the strat is you go on all highs or all lows, right? And you make yourself your own timing challenge, which is why I think the things are arranged like this. So let's I can't even do the intro anymore. So like, let's do highs only. Hi ho. Oh, dang it. You'll see it in a bit. Oh no, I'm tired. Hi, why?
You are tired.
Oh man, my eyes. I'm telling you. But I should be... Come on! I can't even... I don't even remember what my stratosphere is for. Okay, highs. 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 Go lows. Lows. Lows! No's! See, it's cool, like, this is a cool challenge. Highs.
Shit!
Highs. Highs. You're supposed to make it. So this is exactly what I liked about, what was it? I mean, besides Mario Galaxy, loads. Ah! There's another challenge where I'm like, you have to make openings for yourself when you come back later. It's got to be some similar thing just like this, where they're chasing you and you're like, oh, I probably should have skipped over the final gate. I'm probably gonna kill myself even if I get this. This is a bust. Let's try it again.
Shit. What was that game where you're controlling two things at the same time? With each analog stick?
Oh yeah, it's called.
Shit.
Why are you asking me questions? My brain's fried. I can see a picture of it in my head, but what is it called?
Yeah, it has that really simple art style, but yeah, I think you might be talking about that one, because I feel like that one had a challenge where you would do something like that.
Let's go for it! Let's go for it! No! Are you kidding me?